Hello, today we'll be discussing copyright law, specifically fair use in education, covered on the Copyright Act of 1976. As teachers in the 21st century, it is highly likely that you have used different forms of digital media to get your point across to students. What is unfortunate is that most teachers are unsure if they are using it correctly or are even allowed to use most media at all. Because of this, there are less and less people using all of the forms of media they could be using in their classroom, and students are at a disadvantage. In comes fair use, which permits a second user to copy part or all of a copyrighted work under certain circumstances, even when the copyright holder has not given permission. Let me be clear. It is not the simplest concept, but with a few short key factors and questions, you can understand clearly. There are four main factors to be considered: the purpose and character of your use, including whether such use is commercial nature or is for non-profit educational purposes, the nature of the copyrighted work, the amount of substance of the portion taken in relation to the copyrighted work as a whole, and the effect of the use upon the potential market. Since there is not one clear rule, fair use requires that people use reasoning and judgment and consider all four factors together to come up with a determination. Carrie Russell at the American Library Association put it well when she said, "Fair use cannot be reduced to a checklist. Fair use requires that people think. If you can think, you're more than halfway to understanding what can and cannot be used under fair use." It is important to understand that copying something is part of the creative process, and not copying is not the answer to stopping copyright infringement. In fact, borrowed material is highly effective in education. For instance, when students are learning to write, learners can imitate sentence structure of pre-existing syntactical forms instead of remaining lost and not knowing where to begin. This way, they have something to look forward to and compare to their work. Using pre-existing work also meets 21st century skills. Today, nearly all forms of contemporary creative expressions involve collaboration and teamwork, and most new ideas develop as a result of the conversation process and the sharing of ideas. These aspects must be included in our classroom today. Fair use has been put into place to support you and your actions and is a critical component of the copyright of 1976. Copying, borrowing, and sharing are essential elements of the creative process. The key to understanding fair use is comparing the copied work and the new work. The new work must go beyond superseding the original creation, but add something more with a further purpose, essentially altering the first with a new expression, meaning, or message. What makes a use fair isn't so much the content of the use, but the nature of the use. The important question to ask: what is being done with the copyrighted material? The guide to understanding fair use is the idea of transformativeness. Transformativeness is repurposing of copyrighted materials as part of the creative process. Two questions emerge when considering whether a specific use of copyrighted material is fair use. 1. Did the unlicensed use transform the material taken from the copyrighted work by using it for a different purpose than that of the original? Or did it just repeat the work for the same intent and value as the original? 2. Was the material appropriate in kind and amount, considering the nature of the copyrighted work and of the use? If the answer to these two are yes, a court is likely to find a use fair. For example, my students have been assigned an audio project. They were asked to take a children's book, copyrighted work, and record the book along with sound effects, varied voice effects, and background music, all using GarageBand. The original creation of the book differs from the student's purpose of use, which was to simply fulfill the requirements of the class assignment. When assessing transformativeness of creative work, it is important to determine if there is a negative effect on sales for the original producer. In the case of the audiobook project, there was no economic harm. Key aspect to note: the more strongly transformative a new creative work, the less issue of economic harm matters. Nature of the copyright factor is another factor of fair use. Most times, it is clear that the nature of the work has changed audiences. For example, students are asked to take information they learned about the publishing world or facts and create a magazine cover and a photo editor for a fictional event they created. The information about publishing would appeal to one specific audience, while the cover they created would appeal to another completely. Think of a teacher who finds a great resource on a popular online marketplace and purchases it. They change the name on it, place it back on sale at another or maybe the same marketplace. Not only has that teacher claimed their product as their own, but this replaces the owner's right to profit from his or her own work, limiting legitimate sales for their product. Educators need to use reasoning and judgment considering the specific situation when thinking of fair use. Here are 5 principles that will explain how the doctrine of fair use applies specifically to media literacy education. Educators can 1. Make copies of newspaper articles, TV shows, and other copyrighted works, and use them and keep them for educational use. 2. Create curriculum materials and scholarship that contain embedded copyrighted materials. And 3. Share, sell, and distribute curriculum materials that contain embedded copyrighted materials. Under these principles, learners can use copyrighted materials in creating new materials and distribute their works digitally if they meet the transformativeness standard. I hope these policies, guidelines, and understandings have helped you better understand how fair use can help you in your classroom. Thank you and have a good day.